but you have to replace what you tear down with some structure. We can't tear down the orders and the statutes of morality and not replace it with some better man, choosing to maintain traditions of past, traditions that have got us where we currently are, but willing to adapt according to the changes that are necessary for us to keep progressing. This is the Better Man channel, where our aim is to create a better man, a barbaric man that stands for his convictions, that calls out what is wrong, that applauds what is right. I'm recently been reading Jack Putnam's book. I can't remember the book. I'll leave that in the description of the video. But Jack Putnam, he's saying, man, we live in a culture today where we are neutering the very manhood of young boys. We're pushing this feminine agenda on them, and we're okay with that. Society's all right with that. And then we're seeing mass murder of unborn babies, and culture's okay with that. We're just throwing to the wayside righteous thoughts, righteous living, a code of honor. And he says that the barbaric term isn't exactly what we define it as today. We see barbarians as just this raping, pillaging type of savage mindset that just comes in to destroy. But in the times when people or tribes were described as barbarians, it was only a group of people, a tribe of people that were going against the empire. They chose to go outside of the walls of the empire and live according to their traditions, their morals, their story, their ethics. And yes, they were strong, capable men that believed in utility and could use violence. But they were not going to be on the assembly line of the empire and the bureaucrats and the government telling them what was best for them. They stood for their stories, their traditions, their ways. And so they went against the grain of society because it went against their morals, their code. And these tribes, these people, were described as barbarians. It is time today that we begin to stand for something. And maybe we need to separate ourselves outside the walls of the government, who truly doesn't care about us. They care about their votes. They care about their agendas. They care about what benefits them. And that's going to always be the case with governments. What's the saying? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's been since day one. And like the fall of the Roman Empire, it's the same thing. And we can see this repeating throughout the course of history. And we're no different. We're not untouchable from the disease that can conquer the mind and the heart, that lust and that greed for power. And then we see this in the current times that we live in. So we need barbaric men, some men to become barbarians and to begin to stand up for what they believe and separate themselves. And maybe we have to leave the walls of the empire so that we begin to live out our traditions, live out our code, live out our morals, and that we see young men grabbing a hold of what it means to be a man. And we see a tribe of people that begin to stand up for their convictions and their stories and their traditions, and that we see a society that isn't going to push their agenda on us just because it benefits them. We need to see a community, a tribe of men, a tribe of people begin to stand up for what's right. And again, in this cancel culture society that we live in, they're going to label those type of people barbarians. They're going to label them outcast. They're going to label them impolitically correct. They're going to label them all kinds of names because they're standing up for what's right. And in today's climate, everybody's standing up for something, but not standing for nothing. We see it, this riotous behavior, these Karens of the society that want to do away with the structure of society because it doesn't fit what they feel is right. I'm okay with that mindset, but you have to replace what you tear down with some structure. We can't tear down the orders and the statutes of morality and not replace it with something. If you want to be something that says and stands up and says, hey, this isn't right, I'm fine with that, but let's replace what you think is wrong with something better. We can't just tear down the rules of society and leave it in a chaotic nature. And that's what we see this generation of entitlement doing. Tearing down all traditions, tearing down all morals, tearing down all values, but not replacing it with any structure that's going to guide us to a better life. We need to become men of barbaric ways that begin to go against what culture is saying is right when we know it's wrong. No matter what they're going to label us or define us as, we know in our hearts that we are men that stand for something. And we're going to see a generation that begins to stand for something. And we're not going to push our way on people. We're just going to be examples that is going to be inviting, that's going to be enlightening. And we are going to begin to set our course in a direction that fits our morals and our values. And if the empire, the government, the bureaucrats, the higher ups are not aligning with something that fits our morals, then it's time to step outside the walls of the empire, the government, the bureaucrats, and their agenda, and to begin to see our own course in accordance to the rules, the guidelines, the code that we live by. And in doing so, in the individual level, in the community level, maybe that will have an impact on society as a whole. And if not, we still have to stand our course and stand with our backbone. I love you guys. You'll hear from me next episode.